Hello and welcome to the grill. My name is T Adeyemo, and normally we have Tyson with us, but tonight Tyson Boyce is supporting a candidate at another forum. Is not available tonight, and so it's just me and Lady Candidate Giselle here. We're going to be having a conversation about our priorities. Um, I'd like to say thank you for watching and thank you to Giselle for joining us so much tonight. Now, for people maybe just coming to know you the first time, can you please introduce yourself to our crowd? Thank you.
Absolutely. My name is Giselle Generall, and I am a first time City Councillor candidate for Ward sipiwiyiniwak. And if you're wondering where that is the former Ward 5. So all of the Ward 5 in the West End, plus six neighborhoods of the former Ward 1, are right along 95th and 87th Avenue before the mall. And I am an immigrant from the Philippines. I have a business experience with my Bachelor of Commerce degree and helping with family businesses as a child prior to coming to Canada. And my career is in the nonprofit sector, particularly in the access to justice field, helping people who cannot afford lawyers. And I'm also very hands on involved in our community, from community leagues, medical causes, ethnic newspaper with the Alberta Filipino Journal, and a lot of different ways to, in my own little way, make the world a better place. And I figured I'd take it to the next level by making a positive impact in elected office for Edmonton City Council.
Thank you very much. I was going to ask you, when you go door knocking, what do people tell you? What do you hear?
So, in terms of concerns, one thing I have observed is it really varies on depending on which neighborhood I was at. If you look at the map of Ward CP Winawak, there's two very distinct descriptions of the areas depending on where you are. Basically, all the neighborhoods that are outside the Anthony Henday ring, which is basically half of the neighborhood, all of those are brand new or emerging neighborhoods. About four of these neighborhoods, it's literally like greenfield with only just like a couple hundred houses, where in the future there will be thousands of houses. And in these areas, the major concerns are warranty and coverage for the recently built houses that they have, proper infrastructure so that things will be built well the first time around. Public transit is a big one too, because in many of these areas there's no public transit just yet because there isn't enough population yet to support it. So again, they wanted to get it right the first time. And then in the more mature neighborhoods, so like inside the Anthony Henday ring, so closer to the zoo and Meadowlark and West Edmonton, also in these neighborhoods, some of the major concerns that are very distinct in these areas are revitalization, so like repairs of alleys that have been crumbling for a couple decades. Infill is a huge one because these are older neighborhoods with lowering populations, so there's a desire from the city to have more homes and have more households living in this area, but it's really sometimes causing some discomfort, maybe a bit of chaos with how things are getting done. And then, as far as concerns that all these neighborhoods, regardless of where they are, many of them had to do with recent changes, such as the waste management. So we're all getting used to the new waste management collection system. Many are concerned about community safety, property taxes, making sure it's spent properly. And some residents are also concerned about like equity related issues, so like accessibility, in making sure that there is accessibility and inclusion in all the city programs, services, and infrastructure.
Mm. Thank you very much. You articulate the problems of your ward very well. And it takes me to my next question. On your website, you write to foster an accessible, inclusive, and equitable city where individuals are able to fully benefit from the program, services, and infrastructure. And then, what does inclusivity means to you? Inclusivity. What does that mean to you? And
Absolutely. Mhm.
when you're on your website, what does to foster an accessible, inclusive and equitable city? What does all that mean generally?
For sure. So for me, inclusive is such a broad term, but the way I think of it is that we need to have a city where everybody, regardless of their gender and income and their mobility capacity, and their other personal circumstances, that they are able to take advantage of the different infrastructure programs and services that the city offers in order for these individuals to live productive and meaningful lives. Let me pick a very like, specific example, maybe just to illustrate the point. City playgrounds. So, of course, every child deserves to have the maximum opportunity to have fun and be a child and enjoy our public spaces like playgrounds. Imagine a child who is in a wheelchair. Can they actually access the playground equipment like the swings and the sandboxes and the slides? So that is one thing that from what I have seen in many places in the city, it's a gap. Another example, for instance, again, speaking of public spaces, the different sports facilities that is attached to community league halls, which are integral in our neighborhoods. Can elderly person, maybe an 80-year-old lady in a wheelchair, can she get inside the community league hall? Can she get into the ice rink so she can do fun activities? And from my personal observation, that is not the case at all. So I think that from a policy perspective, from mindset perspective, and basically putting money where our mouth is, it is very important to make sure that within the areas that the municipal government is responsible for, so infrastructure, again, playgrounds, city recreation services, public transit, that anybody should be able to access this with no issues at all, just because of what their perhaps like medical or technological or knowledge based limitations are. So as if I get elected in my position as an elected representative, for me there's two angles to this. First is being leader by example. I am learning that for many members of our community, the way that elected representatives and even governments communicate to citizens, some people are left out because, again, there's an issue of digital accessibility, captions on videos, alt text in photos, image descriptions, translation of documents. Like we need to be really diligent to make sure that everyone with different literacy levels and language proficiencies will be able to process and understand the information that the city is trying to convey. And then secondly is when it comes to physical infrastructure, making sure that and I was shocked that it's actually not the case at all, that certain public transit vehicles cannot accommodate all wheelchair users, which I think is unbelievable and not right. Sometimes we need to do a better job, or as a city, I mean, be more diligent with things such as snow clearing. That is within the municipality's responsibility, because if the city misses, there are gaps with snow clearing. The people that who gets hurt or gets disadvantaged are seniors who are using walkers, for instance. So just making sure that we have that frame of mind, basically from age 0 to 150, everyone is able to navigate the city and be able to live the life that they want to live.
When I listen to you, Giselle, you are very learned and educated, and your answers are thought through. Like you've done your homework, and I'm really happy to
Thank you.
hear the things you're saying. Oh, look, John just said great answer and great examples.
Thank you.
Awesome. So you come across as you've thought through this. And I think John just agreed. Thanks, John. Now, I want to ask you this question. It's centered around inclusion. Have you always felt included in the spaces where you have been?
Um, to be frank, not always. And it's not even there's different levels of feeling included and excluded. Like there are like I think when we think about inclusion, like and or not being included, our mind immediately jumps to like hostility. when people yell at you, like, go back where you came from and whatnot. Of course, that is one method where a particular demographic is excluded, and it's totally not okay. Everyone deserves to feel embraced and included in the environment that they live in. But there are more like subtle ways that sometimes you don't feel necessarily included. Sometimes it can be as simple as like visuals, when many times. And quite frankly, this is why I like volunteering in these particular groups, like government boards and nonprofit boards, because I know that as far as my lived experiences and the perspectives that I brought in, I am a minority under more than one category, from depending on the context. Sometimes in one room, I am the only immigrant, or I'm the only lady with no little children. People assume that people like me have kids, but my needs and perspectives are different because I don't have kids, or I'm the only one who was an orphan, so my family supports are different. And on top of that, there are stereotypes towards Filipino women that again it depends on the context. Sometimes it's good or it's bad. When I'm in board meetings and whatnot, and I attend different workshops and activities, leadership related activities, it's really remarkable how sometimes people would comment, and it's like a polite comment, at least they would think it is, and they would say, "Oh, you're a Filipino? My nanny's a Filipino." Like it's that occupational stereotyping, I think is the word that I'm looking for.
Mm.
And I think that's typical of newcomers, that they experience that, like, you're from this background, they assume that you have had experience in this particular occupation. So is that like a hostile way to exclude me? Like, not necessarily, but at the
Mm.
same time, it makes me realize I need to work extra hard, or to actually deliberately showcase to them that I'm more than the label or assumption that they think I fall, the category that I fall under.
Yeah, isn't it difficult, an extra stress or extra burden? Should you transition to Councillor General, how do you intend to maybe leave this out such that you are not carrying that burden of wanting to be heard every time? How have you thought to go through this?
Well, if I become fortunate enough to become a city councillor, I know I'll be making history. I will be the first BIPOC woman, or hopefully one of the few, because there are other candidates also from other wards. But I might be one of the first BIPOC women who gets elected for city council. It is also very likely that I will be the first Filipino Canadian city councillor that the city of Edmonton has ever had. And I know there will be a bit of an adjustment phase within city administration, within the second floor of City Hall, where the city councilors' offices are. So my plan for this, I mean, Edmonton definitely it's unprecedented situation in Edmonton, but it's something that has happened in many other jurisdictions all over Canada and all over the United States. So my game plan is to connect with a few of my fellow Filipino Canadians who have held public office in other parts of Canada, just to ask what their perspectives and advice are. On top of me being a Filipino Canadian, I'm also a millennial. As far as elected representatives, I would be on the younger spectrum. So folks who might have been working at City Hall might assume, you make an assumption the moment they see my face that I'm the secretary and not the city councilor. But that is something that many American young elected representatives have experienced back in 2019 and 2017. So, and it's really actually easier now to connect with elected representatives over social media. I know a few of these younger um, American BIPOC elected representatives. So my game plan is to connect with them, ask for mentorship, and see what any practical things they can share that I can apply.
I like to talk about isolation and loneliness. And this past year, we know that it has been a problem for many people. And just about an hour ago, emergency measures were announced across Alberta. Um, I want to ask you what you're going to do about isolation and loneliness. And the question is, how will you ensure that people with mental health needs can access systems that are overloaded?
Yeah, it's really challenging because of restrictions that in-person opportunities are even more limited. But one thing that really holds a lot of potential, we just need to be a bit more creative about it, is using digital tools. As for myself, not just actually just because of COVID, but I do have my own like physical limitations that restrict me from like walking all day long for door knocking. So I know that compared to other candidates who are in better shape, I'm not door knocking as much as them. But I have been doing a pretty decent job of using not just one, but a whole multitude of social media platforms and communication strategies to reach out to as many people as possible. Because, for instance, millennials and older, Gen Xers, boomers, many of them actually use Facebook. The younger demographics, younger millennials and Gen Z,
Sorry,
they use.
sorry, Giselle, you're losing me. The question was about mental health. How do you? Oh, okay, I
Yes.
get what you're saying. So mental health, and you're saying, sorry, I probably shouldn't have interrupted you there. So you're going to use social media to,
Yeah,
uh,
to help inform people what the tools are. Because as an
yeah, but people
example,
feel
one.
burnt all the time on social media.
I'm
People
sorry.
like want to get off. People feel burnt as well.
Mm-hmm.
Social media, they feel overwhelmed and burdened. Is that
Yeah.
your answer to mental health concerns? Social media?
I mean, there's definitely different tools that are available, right? At least that's within my current capacity right now as a candidate. I
Hmm.
can use some social media to spread awareness,
Sure.
and it's not just like my own posts. Like there's a lot of community groups on different platforms. I'm gonna use a very specific example. I think there's at least four different versions of like Filipinos in Edmonton Facebook pages. Then I'm gonna use that to share like this is actually a good resource and things like that. Um, Ethnic media and community-based papers are still a thing. Actually, my neighborhood has one, the Alberta Filipino Journal, as an example. Um, yeah, I think even just here in West Edmonton, there's a few neighborhoods that have a combination of print and their own like private newsletters and print newsletters. So
Sure.
using that as opportunities to convey information as will hopefully complement the digital communication channels to convey the information to those who prefer print.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. So, in terms of mental health, where do you go when you feel overwhelmed?
For myself, there's two things, or three, I suppose, actually, that I use. Um, I did go. The first time I went to therapy was in 2017 to help recover from horrible, horrible trauma. So there's
Mm,
already some tools that I have learned from that. I have what I call an emotional management toolkit, and I use that. And to quickly summarize, the three components of it is to give myself a rating on how intense the emotion that I'm feeling, both good and bad. So if I'm like 10 out of 10 happy, I would say I'm 10 out of 10 happy. If I'm 10 out of 10 demoralized, I would say that as well. And to find words. And the more specific your the emotional label, the better. So there is a difference between feeling overwhelmed, feeling attacked, feeling drained, and feeling demoralized. Like if you think of
mm.
these four words, for example, like they're all like in many different kinds of like negative, but they affect you negatively in a different way. So that's hopefully that's also helpful for all our listeners here. So and viewers, if you articulate specifically that label, it's really helpful. And also, I have managed to secure a unlimited telephone therapy service, which is covered by Alberta Healthcare. So this is a plug as well. The website is hellomentalhealth.ca. You can avail of this service after you get a referral from your family doctor, and it's unlimited telephone therapy from a doctor here in the province. I actually, my latest appointment with this doctor was just this morning, actually, and it went really
Mm,
well. Yeah,
mm. Okay, so what I've just done to put that out for our listeners. Hello, mental health. I'll say because mental health is important, and I thank you for being
hmm,
open and transparent about that and sharing a resource for people to go and hear, so people to go and use. There are several strong progressive candidates in your ward. The question is, what do you bring to the table that makes you unique and stands you out? Or what is your superpower?
absolutely. My superpower comes in two categories: my proven track record of serving the community for the past many years I've lived in Edmonton. I'm only 30 years old, and I already, in my opinion, have done many things. I've volunteered in my community league for 5 years, had many positions, including vice president and newsletter director. I'm a 3 year columnist for an ethnic paper conveying information in our community, and I try to give as much as what I am able to do, like including like literally like parts of me. I am a regular blood donor, I'm a regular hair donor because I care about medical causes. And I work in the nonprofit sector. I actually chose not to become a lawyer because I felt worried about people who cannot afford me. And I'm lucky enough to find a place where I help people who cannot afford lawyers. So, this proven track record of me being hands on in Edmonton, helping people from and working with people from all walks of life is like a 1-2 punch as far as my superpowers. And the next thing that I bring is my lived experience. If you look at my website and all of my communications, I always emphasize all the time that I'm here to run and represent everyday people. And I have many experiences of everyday people that I think is not always represented in our elected office. For instance, I'm a public transit user who cannot drive, and that's something many marginalized Edmontonians experience. I'm a newcomer who needed at the time to learn how to live in this city all season long, including winter. I am someone with difficult life circumstances growing up. You know, I was an orphan. I survived sexual assault, amongst other things, and that resilience had built my perspective in life. And I will definitely do my best to fight for people who had difficult life circumstances and help them have a better future.
Thank you very much, Giselle. This question is about the books you've been reading. What are the top three academic peer reviewed articles you've read recently on municipal governance? And perhaps how have these books or articles shaped your thinking about your potential role as a city councillor?
So, in terms of like academic peer reviewed books, I'll be frank with you, I haven't read a lot of them recently because I was focusing on documents and information that the city of Edmonton itself has published. The corporate accessibility plan, for example, I was reading through it because I'm fortunate enough that I personally don't have a lot of, like permanent disabilities. So I needed to understand the lived experiences of those with disabilities and what are they really looking for in terms of what a city government can do. I was also trying to read cover to cover and over again the Edmonton City Plan because that it is basically the long term strategic document of how the city of Edmonton will do things for the next several years. And I have it here with me right now. I attended a workshop series a few years ago called Planning Academy. So it's a comprehensive workshop series about um, urban planning and zoning. So and I have several booklets over here, and I'm refreshing myself of all of the technical terms and concepts over there because I was told, and it's true, that as a city councillor, Of course, we make decisions on really important topics, that bylaws and policies, but a lot of the time, city councilors also make decisions on zoning and how parcels of land in the city are used. So I am refreshing myself on all the booklets I got from this Planning Academy education series.
Thank you. So, from all your reading, you're making commitments. Can you please tell us your top three commitments that are incredibly important to you and which you are promising that you are going to uphold if you become counselor?
So the top three are as follows. The first one is to be a responsive, transparent, and engaged elected representative. That is one of the reasons why I felt really motivated to run. I have felt out of touch with the folks who are supposed to represent my particular riding. And when you are in a situation that you hear more about issues and updates from the city from counselors that are not in the area that you are where you live, I think that's not a great thing. So doing a combination of in-person and digital activities, and communication methods, door knocking, town halls, e-newsletters, Facebook Live, all these different methods. I'm going to use all of them to make sure that constituents hear from their elected representative not just before the election day or shortly before election day. So that is very important to me. If constituents don't feel that they're being heard by their elected representative on a regular basis, not just when there is bad news, I think that really creates issues with the relationship building within constituents in the city. So that's the first one. The second one is making sure that we support local in all the city initiatives that we do. Um, Making sure that the local amenities that we have actually supports the people who live in those areas, and being able to uphold the 15-minute districts that the city plans to do, so that all of us can have a productive lifestyle without having to travel very far, and we really feel at home in the corners of the city where we live. And finally, the having an accessible, inclusive city is really important to me, and that actually includes all of the other platforms as well, such as having good transit and transportation infrastructure so that everybody can get around the city properly, and making sure that our environment is also taken care of. Yeah.
Hmm. Now, what sort of city policies and programs would you push forward?
Where do we start? It's a long list. Okay, I'll try my best to summarize. Um, I don't think as of recently, if I were to be elected, like I don't even need to reinvent the wheel, if you know what I mean. Like I think there are some initiatives or reports that are already there and they're great. We just need to have the gumption and motivation to apply them.
Hmm.
For instance, I believe it was published just last year, implementing all the recommendations of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Task Force. I think that it's actually, like a win-win-win situation. It will help address the challenges when it comes to policing. It can help also address challenges with fiscal management, with budgeting, and it can also help address other challenges related to to community safety as a whole beyond just policing. Implementing the items in the corporate accessibility plan, for example. So yeah, I don't need to even like push a new bylaw or anything like that. We just need to make sure that this is also diligently applied.
So, in many ways, you agree with what the city is doing right now from your website. What do you not agree with that you'd like to bring as a new initiative?
I think the many things that I have concerns is, I think a lot of it just comes to implementation. So, for example, I know and that I understand that that was the intention of the city to revise things and make improvements when they did the very recently applied bus network redesign and the pilot project of the on-demand buses. Like my neighborhood is affected by it, and I take the on-demand bus now. Like half the time. I was concerned with the implementation of it, and I felt, because I experienced this firsthand as a transit user right now, that the impacts towards the individual Edmontonians, like the human impact, I think is the word I'm looking for, is not always considered. So I think that when if I ended up getting elected, I'll be able to do a better job, in my opinion, of probing the details and implementation so that it affects Edmontonians as less negatively as possible, if that makes sense.
Mm. So, other than probing and working on implementation, what are the new ideas you're bringing to the city in terms of climate change?
So, in terms of climate change, like, there's a few different angles there that I think have a lot of potential and are worth looking into. The currently implemented waste management, waste collection system is pretty great. I think there is one advocacy group, and I want to talk with them in the future if we have an opportunity to do so, to explore additional bylaws or regulations when it comes to single-use items, single-use plastics and whatnot. If there is a way to even crack down on that even further to reduce our impact. And then the other thing, I haven't really seen too much information on what the city is doing about this particular angle, and that is reducing waste at the source. Is there potential for the city from an economic standpoint, maybe building industries that are related to reusing or recycling different types of materials? Or can we, as a municipal government, work with other stakeholders or provincial and federal governments so that packaging of products, for instance, can be made from something other than things that are only single use. So those are the few angles that I really wanted to look into. So on the manufacturing side of things and other recycling industries.
Okay, so you're right on your website. I'm reading, I'll support initiatives that address the health of our local environment, as well as those that represent Edmonton's contribution to combating global climate change. What will this look like under leadership of Councillor General?
So, one thing to make note is that out of the city council, I'm just one of the 13. So, this is definitely a collaborative effort. Also, I'm not even the mayor. So, it will be like under the leadership of the entire team of city council, of which hopefully Councillor Giselle Generall would be one of
Mm.
them. So, what I'm really hoping to see here is a combination of changing where our energy sources are. So, shifting things to solar or wind as much as possible, and waste management and waste reduction, as I have mentioned, and to be able to continue to do our efforts to protect our, I believe it's called ribbon of green, right? Protecting all our green spaces and trees and whatnot in our river valley, because trees do play a really remarkably important role in addressing climate change. So we have to preserve that. So those are the types of those are the things that I hope I contribute in collaboration with the rest of city council.
Okay, when you look ahead, like most of us, we look to the future with positivity rather than trepidation or nervousness. When you look at your future in the city, you've been here 11 years. What do you see? What sort of Edmonton do you see?
So And because I have always been a resident of the West Side, like I see a lot of growth of and potential, and I have witnessed this myself in with my own two eyes, like in the neighborhood where I lived in. There's just so much growth. So yeah, sounds repetitive, but there's like growth and transformation is really where I look at things, and I think it brings a lot of excitement. There's a lot of demographical changes that are happening in our city, maybe even in Canada. What's it called? I think they call it the senior tsunami, as they say, and there's going to be even more and more individuals that will be reaching retirement age, and I envision, or I hope that our city will have enough good like structures and programs that maybe I'll see like 2 dozen seniors like happily having a walk in our neighborhoods, and having great environment and relationship with other members of the community that maybe are just starting their families. I really hope there's another word I'm looking for. Oh yeah, it's in the book behind me. Urban villages. Like I really hope that Edmonton, because Edmonton is a big city, but we have, almost like 160 community leagues and almost 300 neighborhoods, right? I really hope and envision that Edmonton will be this really like cohesive and well connected and lovingly interdependent cluster of urban villages where everyone can have a good life regardless of which corner of the city they decide to call their home.
Hmm. That's beautiful, Giselle. I wanted to ask you a final question. Um, One of the problems we hear, and it may not be, we hear when we do this on forums, the problem is a problem of a singular problem of homelessness here in Edmonton, and it may not be a big problem in your word. Um, but other than, so this is a question, other than funding and advocacy for homeless people as solutions, what else, in your opinion, can would you advocate that we do for the homeless in Edmonton?
So you've already mentioned the two very important topics, which is providing funding for more housing and then an advocacy. I think one angle that I probably am more familiar with because of my professional background, it's really important to look at the challenge of homelessness from an access to justice perspective,
Hmm.
making sure that different laws that affect people in poverty more significantly are reviewed, so that people are in less precarious situations that can actually lead them into experiencing homelessness or houselessness, right? For instance, the rules regarding people getting evicted. I know this is more like a provincial thing, but I just thought it's worth mentioning, right? There was a program by the city to help people who might be having issues with their landlords, and programs to help them find like a mediation or finding a solution so that the tenant don't lose their home. That's I think a very important consideration, because as soon as someone loses their home, it's very very difficult for people to start all over. Many of the programs and services that you actually need to rebuild your life requires for you to have a permanent or even like a stable mailing address. So so basically that's the angle that I think I want to discuss. As a city councillor, I probably won't be able to do a lot of like specific tangible actions, but I'll be basically like tap into responsible parties in the Ministry of Justice, basically. But it's about tenants' rights, and making sure that evictions are less problematic as possible.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. And a final question is: a state of emergency was declared tonight by the province. A little too late. What are your thoughts on that?
Um, where do I begin? um, well, the first part of like my thoughts is kind of like looking in the past, but I know that hindsight is 2020, but I suppose if I personally would have a magic wand and be able to go back in time, I'm personally am the type of person who prefers, like, ripping the band-aid in the beginning. So I personally would have wished that a very, like, fast and furious, I guess, and like really, really, like, hardcore strict restriction measures in the beginning maybe would have been more helpful. And if we had that in the past, then we would have overcome the challenges due to COVID. But given where we are at right now, for me to, like, I'm a very, like, solutions focused, like, instead of complaining, I'm like, where do we help, that kind of angle, right? And I guess, the immediate thing that came to my mind is, like, as a candidate, I'll just have to adjust my activities to make sure that I follow the rules and I protect, people who I talk to and volunteers. And I will do what I have done in the past, which is do as much as I can in my own capacity to encourage people to support local businesses, find opportunities to, provide hands-on support to people in need. Yeah, right now, frankly, I'm just in action mode. Like, I'm just, that's probably what I'm gonna do for the rest of the night, is to think, what are the things I need to change, what do I need to do to help and,
Mm.
reduce negative impact as much as I can.
You're spoken truly as a politician, and you say you're a first-time politician, and you're also a millennial. I just wonder, if this doesn't work out for you, what next?
What next?
Mhm.
Um,
What next? Do you think about that? What if not?
oh, absolutely. So, I have just like, as personal projects, like, I have a lot of things that I look forward to doing, regardless of what happens on after the election. I have a fulfilling career in the nonprofit sector, so I know that that's something that I can further explore. I'm also a writer, so I have some ideas when it comes to that. And I might have mentioned this before, but win or lose, I wanted to collaborate with relevant agencies, and actually, a few candidates have wanted to work with me on this project, which is to make a better, more effective toolkit for future candidates who want to run for public office.
What's been your best part out of this process? What are some of the memories that that you find
Absolutely.
it most enduring?
So we have to go back to the very beginning, actually, which is the process of collecting nomination papers. When I found out that you can submit your papers as early as January 11th, and that you need your papers to be submitted first before you can do anything else, like fundraising and spending money, I made a post on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn asking people to, if they live in the area, to if I can drop by their house and collect and get their signature. So this was between Christmas and New Year's. It was winter. It is cold, and I was so humbled by the dozens and dozens of Edmontonians, many of which I've actually never met, who would, what's the word, DM, like, direct message me on Twitter and says, "Oh yeah, I live in here. Just walk over
Oh,
to collect the signature." And for me, I would take the
oh,
bus, walk through the snow, like, hold my clipboard very far away from their front porch while they sign it with their own pen and would sanitize
oh.
it afterwards. Such a really remarkable jump start to this
Yeah, I
candidacy
mean,
journey.
whatever happens, you've put your name out there, and I'm incredibly proud of your bravery and your courage. And I know, as a woman, as a visible minority, it's not easy when you come out and say, I want to do this, vote for me. So it's like, as a parent, I say to my daughter, make friends. But I'm a grown up woman. It's not easy to make friends, as it's not easy to go door knocking. It's not easy to say, why don't you try or check me out? I'm running for office. So I salute your courage, and I wish you
Thank
all the
you.
very best. You make me proud. And one day, maybe one day, I want to be like you when I grow up. But your legacy and legacy of other women running in 2021, our daughters and our girls will look up to. So thanks again, Giselle, for all that you've been doing. in non-profit world. And thanks for taking the time for this
Thank you so
media.
much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it, and I think this the
Okay.
Ladies Corner has been
Awesome.
doing an incredible job, trying to amplify additional coverage for the municipal election. Like thumbs up, two thumbs up to you, folks.
For sure. That was the grill. Please join us next week, Wednesday. Good night. Thanks again, Giselle. Bye bye.
Thank you.